Okay, so this summer, this is good for all of us to do on the first day, is go ahead and get all the software and at least a lot of it configured. So set up, download, install, configure, just basic setup stuff. So on the homepage of the course, we already went through the Discord server and the syllabus. Now the third link here is setting up your environment. So if you click on that link, this is the document that we're going through. I might make a couple small edits live from just updated from last semester, but basically, we're gonna go ahead and install Discord and join the virtual classroom. We're gonna create a GitHub account. If you don't have one already, we're gonna install Notepad and Git. We're gonna install some tools like TortoiseGit. We're gonna install Visual Studio Code and configure VS Code. Maybe we're just updating VS Code and installing some extensions. We're going to install Node. We're going to install a mockup tool called Balsamic. And if you're in person, you might want some docking station drivers, but it's an online class, so I'm probably just going to delete that. All right, so let's get into it. So install Discord and join the virtual Discord classroom. Clearly, Grant and some others have already done that. You've already created an account and logged in on the desktop app. Again, I need to update this document to have the Discord link, and I should be able to just copy that right in. So if I click on edit, paste, apply. So there's our updated link. Now the classroom name, that's an old classroom name, or the server name, AWD second year virtual classroom. So that's AWD, that was second year virtual classroom. If you're using an alias, like your gamer tag, go ahead and change your nickname. So you right click your name and you go down right here's a screenshot to change your nickname. Change your nickname to your first and last name so it helps me recognize who you are. Create a GitHub account and update your profile so you guys can follow along if you're at home. So we're going to go to github.com and sign in. Now, if you don't have an account, you need to create an account. And let me kind of go back here. The suggestion is use first and last name syntax. You might need to add a number at the end, so just a generic username, first name underscore last name. Recommendation is don't use a gamer tag again. We like to know who you are and who the GitHub account belongs to. Now if I go ahead and sign in with my cached credentials, you can see my username is Evan Gudmested. So this semester, as you guys are making repositories and sharing those repositories with me, this is the account that you'll share it with, is Evan Gudmested. And that'll be on the assignment, so you'll see the account to share it with. So I'll have access to your repositories. Okay, installing Notepad++ and Git. And so, walk through this. These are two different tools. Kind of recommend an ad blocker if you don't have an ad blocker, because Notepad++ has some ads on their website. So go ahead and bring in an ad blocker. Now I have an ad blocker called, I think that's called, what is that even called? uBlock. Okay, so I use uBlock. There's different ad blockers out there. It's built right into a Chrome extension. Here's one that you can use. go ahead and download Notepad++. So if we open up Notepad++, there's different versions. I should have Notepad++ already installed. It's a fancy notepad, right? I mean, that's what the name suggests. We got Notepad and we got Notepad++. So it's really easy to look at source code in Notepad++ versus opening it in another tool. Can't hurt to download the latest. Again, a good ad blocker should block some ads. You get this green download button. Put it into your downloads. Save it, and this will just give me the latest and greatest Notepad if you run through and install this. And it's going to undo my old version, which apparently I had a 32-bit, and replace it with a 64-bit. Sure. Just depends on your machine. Most machines are 64-bit processors, I should say. Okay. So now I've got the latest version of Notepad installed, Notepad++. Okay, now we're going to install Git. Git is for version control. And so when you use GitHub, GitHub is the website. Git is the underlying technology. And so I'm going to click this button here. If you're not on a Windows machine, it'll download for Mac or whatever OS you're on. And then we're going to click here for the latest version. Again, putting this in my downloads. Kind of getting my software up to date. You guys are welcome to follow along. Let that finish downloading. Click on Run. I'm just going to click all the defaults. I'm not going to change any of the default options. Go ahead and get my software up to date. Just making sure that this first video is on the playlist. And it is on the playlist. The syllabus review, all that's good to go. Can close that. I'm logged into GitHub. Downloading and installing Git. And I don't really care about the release notes. Uncheck that. Finish. Okay. So the settings don't really matter. Just select the defaults. You just need Git installed. Download and install Git. A lot of these settings that I had you check before are now defaults. So I'm just going to update this. Install. With default settings, don't really need these. Okay. Git is the underlying technology that allow you to do pushes and pulls and commits and save points and all this kind of stuff. There's different tools that you can use to actually do that. There's a command line, what's called a git bash, and you can do all of your pushing and pulling via command prompt. There are also graphical tools. One GUI based tool is our graphical user interface is called TortoiseGit, and that's something that I've used for a long time. I like TortoiseGit, so you can go to tortoisegit.com. And what's really nice about TortoiseGit is it's built right into Windows. And so I'll go ahead and download and install the latest 64-bit TortoiseGit. And I use GitHub Desktop. So, I mean, it doesn't really make a big difference. You could see I had a 2.11, now I've got 2.14. So sure, let's update TortoiseGit. Let that finish downloading. It's going to close Windows Explorer for me, just reboot it. Okay, I chose to run the configuration wizard. While Windows Explorer is booting back up, of course it's English. Sure, this is my Git path. That's the default. I'm going to change my name to my GitHub account name and my email to my GitHub email that I log in with. That has changed. I had a different account. Now this is strictly work, and keep all that the defaults. Okay, so that's TortoiseGit. After you install TortoiseGit, there's some settings that I'm going to walk you through here. You can right click and you now have this option for TortoiseGit. Go to settings, and here's Git. So I just clicked on Git, and you could see that if you didn't run the configuration wizard, you can update your name and your email here. And under credential, go to open settings, and you go to Windows Cred. I forget if it's all Windows users or current users. Let's look. All Windows users. And what I'm trying to do by changing this is set it up so that your username and password for GitHub kind of automatically passes through, so you don't have to put in your GitHub username and password more than once. I might have to make a little video on getting that set up if you want to use TortoiseGit, but I'm going to hit OK. OK. And, you know, if we didn't do that right, we can always circle back later, and that's okay. Because that process has actually changed within recent years. GitHub changed your authentication method, and so now they make you generate a token, and that kind of changed within the last year, an authentication token. Okay, so that's Tortoise Git. Now, additionally, I can add this semester. So another tool that's pretty useful besides Tortoise Git is GitHub Desktop. So I'm just gonna go ahead and put a note in here to install GitHub Desktop, and I'll go here, little bullet, install with default options. Log in with to the desktop application with your github.com credentials. Okay, so let's go here. Let's download. And you can see I have an old installer already download, but we'll run the installer anyways and update it like everything else. Okay. Gonna pause for 1 second. Okay, so I installed, and you can see just kind of booted up GitHub Desktop. Now, when you're first logged in, you're going to need to log in with your account. So you can see here I'm logged in with my GitHub account. And if you're not, go ahead and just authenticate with your github.com credentials, and you're good to go there. So install GitHub Desktop. And moving on to installing Visual Studio Code. So this is our IDE. We'll be in most of the semester. This is our main tool. And so let's go ahead and install VS Code. I already have it installed. Of course, it'll be updated. I pin it at the bottom down here, along with the, this is VS Code more for your JavaScript stuff, and this is Visual Studio Community Edition, which is more in line with all the C# stuff that we do. So I got the blue Visual Studio and the purple Visual Studio. Come on, website. That doesn't look right. Okay, well, this is not just me. A couple people were getting this slow code.visualstudio.com I had to refresh it once or twice and got it to come up. Let me go ahead and click download. Now there is one good checkbox to check during this installer. It's not the end of the world if you don't check it, but I'll show that to you when we get there. So I'm not sure if this is checked for you guys by default. This is like the second little step in the wizard, and I like this checkbox right here. Add open with code action to Windows Explorer context menu and file context. So these two buttons, that just lets you right click a folder and open that folder in VS Code. So it's kind of a nice little shortcut, like a folder on your machine. So, whatever. Whether you want the desktop icon, I just put it down in my taskbar down below. So I don't need the desktop icon. I just put it in my taskbar. That way it's always there. Install. And then we'll go through some plugins that are useful. Okay, launch Visual Studio Code. Grant, did you get the downloader going?
Yes, I'm good.
All right, cool. And it went ahead and opened up kind of a little website that I got on my machine here. I've got some deprecated extensions. So I'm going to go ahead and just start by uninstalling anything deprecated. I can always npm for VS Code. Interesting. So got a little warning. This publisher is verified. This is deprecated, no longer being maintained. Let's uninstall that. We can always reinstall extensions. No big deal to uninstall since they're listed as deprecated. Beautify. Uninstall. Debugger for Chrome. Okay, this is just on my machine, not anything you guys will have to do. But since we're here, let's refresh that, and those should be gone. Well, let's go back to extensions. Got some new release notes. Here, clear. There we go. Okay. So back to the install guide. Too many tabs. Okay, in VS Code, under settings, change the tab size to 2. Now, this is just a coding recommendation that when you hit tab, basically, how many spaces does it put in? And so, not a not a critical deal if you don't do this, but let's go ahead and do it. So VS Code, and the way that we do this is we're going to click on this manage, and then settings. The number of spaces a tab is equal to, and so we just change this down in case we have code indented a lot. It just changes that default to 2 spaces of the space bar instead of 4. And really all you have to do is change that, and I believe that auto saves. So if I go back and double check that, under settings, yeah, tab size is set to 2. Okay, so install or update all of the following extensions. So let's go back to extensions, which are these little blocks here. And here's Prettier and version 9.2. So I'm not sure if there's an update command. I don't remember seeing update. So this is just glancing 9.12. If I go back and search for Prettier, it looks like that just kept that up to date. So you can just search for an extension and install it. This looks to me like it's the most up-to-date extension. Prettier, that's a code formatter. You know, you can format your code using Prettier. Beautify is another code formatter. Now, that one is no longer being maintained. So I'm going to actually take that off the list since it's not being maintained. I don't want to maintain it as a suggestion for you guys. Code spell checker. Okay, we've got that installed and up to date. If not, you should see an install option. Just kind of gives you, well, exactly what it sounds like. Spell check on your tags. HTML validate. You know, the idea behind this extension is you don't have to go necessarily to a online validator. Is that you can get some validation suggestions to you in your HTML in your code editor in VS Code. And so this is HTML validate by HTML validate. Let's go ahead and install that. Now I'm going to take the highlight off because it's not new anymore. So not that that makes a big difference. And get rid of that highlight. Okay, so we got HTML validate. Let's look up style lint. Style lint by style lint. And so a linter is kind of the same thing. It's going to be some compile time suggestions for your syntax for your JavaScript. And so let's go ahead and install style lint. Get rid of the highlights. Get rid of the word new. ESLint. And that looks up to date for me by Microsoft. No, ESLint by Dirk. I think Microsoft kind of bought the one from our fella Dirk. So I think it's actually tagged as a Microsoft plugin now. So I'll update that by Microsoft. Okay, let's search for npm. It says support by running npm is now provided by VS Code. You can run npm scripts. So we no longer need this, is the short version. So I'm going to delete npm. Live server, I know this is one that we have. This is allowing you to have essentially a web server built into Visual Studio, so you can boot up your websites kind of locally on local hosts. So we've got live server. CSS Peak. This is one that I never got in the habit of using, but maybe I will. So let's look up CSS Peak. And it kind of allows you to like jump from your HTML to just kind of glance at the CSS that you have written for like an ID or a class. And finally, VS Code icons. And that just gets little pretty icons for your different file types in VS Code. Okay, so we've updated that. Install or update all the following extensions. Okay, didn't we remove prettier? No. Okay, so we removed a different one. Under extensions, more actions, show installed extensions. Okay, so we're gonna kind of clear that. And we're gonna find prettier. So here's prettier. We're gonna click on the gear next to prettier. Extension settings. Again, kind of change the width. 120 lines. Scroll down. Okay, so the print width fit code within this line limit, I already changed that to 80 on mine. But I think that at one point the default was 120. So just basically writing code more narrowly. That way, if you write a lot of code, you've got more room. And check the single quote checkbox. Use single quotes instead of double quotes. And so you know in JavaScript, you can use either double quotes or single quotes. And the reason why single quotes are sometimes preferable in JavaScript over double quotes is that HTML by default, your attributes use double quotes. And so if you use single quotes in JavaScript, they tend to conflict less with your HTML if you're writing like inline JavaScript. Not that that happens all too often, but there tends to be less conflicts, is why we suggest that. Okay, which brings us down to install Node, which will kind of foreshadow into our lecture today, which we're going to do soon. We're going to go to nodejs.org and download the most current. So you can do like the latest stable version or the current version that's, I guess, a little bit less stable. If you go to a command prompt, you can check out your Node version by typing node/v. So it's been a while since I've updated my Node version, so you can see version 14. Let's go ahead and just do the recommended for most users, right? The latest stable, if you will. And save. If we ever need to upgrade to the current, we can always come back here and do it. But stability seems like a good thing to me. Let that finish downloading. Defaults, 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 defaults. All the way through. Those objectives have been updated. Basically, your course objectives, as I'm installing, I'm just kind of playing tidy up. This course objectives are your CLOs, course level outcomes. We already covered that. Okay, so now if I close, I go from version 14. If I open up a new command prompt and check out my version, I've got version 18, which is what I just downloaded and installed. Again, the current version, I'll update that. It really doesn't matter. I selected the LTS version. For the stability of it, it says recommended for most users. It's fine. Either way you go, you're not going to be wrong there. I'll say LTS version. Okay, now I know that this is an old key. If you're just looking here, that expires December of 22. So let's go ahead and download and install this mock-up tool called Balsamic for desktops, called Download Wireframes, and this will be a tool that we have the option to use to do some screen mock-ups. And let me get the updated key for the document. Okay, you guys should be able to copy and paste the updated key, which has a new expiration date. Once you install this tool, you're going to copy that. You're going to copy that key into the software. I don't need a desktop shortcut. All right, all I have left to do is show you where to put that key in, and then this part will be over. Let's go ahead and launch it. Okay, you get this nasty error message. Your trial has expired, but if you go to Help, Register, you plug in that key, you click on Register, then you got 231 days left from today. So again, wireframes are kind of a mock-up tool that can kind of help you plan the structure of a page before you actually start to code it. It's kind of a blueprinting tool, if you will. All right, so that is the end of setting up your environment. We got all of our software up to date. So I'll stop that here.